Hello everybody, welcome again to the Actor's Vow. This is Denise Borraz Trepat. And, well, this week, I'm going to be honest. I have totally been procrastinating this episode. And these past months have been just so crazy. And I just feel like the energy right now, like there's so much going on in so many levels that I just needed to sit down. I literally just did a 1 hour meditation and dance and just have some fun to just put myself through the courage to, sit down here and just do this, which I love doing. But in moments like this, I would be doing the wrong thing and just overeating this new 5 cheese chips that I found on Trader Joe's, which is not good because I'm lactose intolerant. And yeah, just, this is not what this episode is about, but just like a super random rant to start with this because I just needed to get it out of my chest. But this episode, I am very excited. It's about film, and not just about film and acting in film. It's more towards acting in film for actors that come from a theater background. I wanted to give you advice on things that I struggled with and things that I encountered when I finished acting school and after a lifetime of performing in theater, and I started doing film and TV. And there was just so many things that I wish I had heard before or I had been taught. And I just wanted to share with you that in the hope that, I feel like it's June now. So many people are graduating and so many people are going to go off into the world and want to do film and TV, as you should, as an actor. I feel like you shouldn't just limit yourself to one thing. Even if, theater might be your favorite thing, you can try other outlets. But I think it would be a relevant topic for right now, for things that you should learn or hear about or start thinking about before you find yourself on set and just find yourself completely lost, or do your first project and watch it and you're like, oh no, this looks horrible. And it's not your fault because you just didn't know something. But before we start the episode of this week, I wanted to share with you the Sunday Spotlight, and I'm just so excited. His name is Sheldon Mba. He's an actor, dancer, educator, spokesperson. Like, there's nothing he can't do. And he just graduated from an MFA in theater performance, but he's been performing for a long time. He studied theater and dance in undergrad. And I'm just so excited for you guys to read his interview because he's going to be talking about film and theater and how they are an essential part of society and the importance of an actor having an extensive training like he does, or in other aspects, in other ways that actors can train. And he's also going to be talking about the current situation in America and the Black Lives Matter movement. So I think his interview is going to be really relevant. It's going to be so helpful for a lot of you, and he's going to give you amazing tips. And if you want to find him before this Sunday, he has a website, and if I may say, it's a really nice website for an actor. And it's sheldonmba.com, spelled SheldonMba.com. And then his Instagram handle is Sheldon_Mba. So having said that, let's start with the episode this week. So I wanted to start by saying that this is an episode I wish 3 years ago me would have heard. I graduated from school and I have been doing theater my whole life. I started theater when I was 8. I'll talk about this story another day, but I've always been a theater actor. And when I graduated school, I made the crazy decision to move from New York City to LA with nothing else, not knowing anybody in LA, and I just wanted to start doing TV and film. And it was such a transition. And there are so many things I wish I had been taught. I mean, when I was in school, I took one on-camera class senior year. I don't know about you guys, but that's all I got in acting school. And that class was helpful, but it was mostly about self-taping. Like in the class, the teacher would teach us about how to self-tape. And yes, you can learn about camera training, but there's so much more that goes into, being on set and acting for camera than just self-taping. I also took, outside of my college, I took a New York Conservatory summer course. And there I also took a camera class, but it was also very technical. And again, I think every actor should know all the technical parts and aspects of being on set and on camera, and that's something you should learn. But it's also, I think, something that you can find on the internet or on Google, like technical terms like hitting the mark and things like that. It's something that you can mostly learn on your own. But there are things that require you having the experience or someone with experience telling you. And those are things that will really make a difference. I mean, I remember that when I started shooting my first shorts and doing things on camera, thank God it was like small stuff. But then I saw it and I was honestly traumatized. I was like, oh no, there's no way, that's not me. Or why does that look so off, And it's just little things. So in the end, acting for theater and for film is the same. And they will tell you that in school. And that is true. I mean, in the end, what we are doing is telling a story. But the medium in which we do it changes and it is different. And you do need to do little adjustments. Now, I think it's easier to go from theater to film than from film to theater. Way easier. But still, if you can act for theater, you will be able to act for film, but you will have to make adjustments. One of the things that I've heard so many times is that in film, everything is smaller. And I think that's such a wrong concept. And let me tell you why. I don't think the word should be smaller. I think the word should be focused. If you think smaller, what you're going to do is make your emotions, make your acting, and make everything that is happening less. And that's not what we want, because the emotions are still there in full potential, right? But it's more focused. It's just you're not doing it for a big audience. It doesn't have to reach the end of a 3,000 seat theater. And we'll talk about this, how you can make it more focused. But I think that's a really big misconception. Another little concept that I think is helpful as an actor is to know that on screen, you don't need as many words. In theater, we have a lot of monologues. In theater, we have a lot of dialogue. And usually, even though that's the job of a playwright or a screenwriter, as an actor, it's helpful to know that that's what is going on and that's the process for them. That a screenwriter, usually for a scene, you will have less words. And the reason for that is because in film, there are close-ups. In theater, you need to explain everything more because everything is more from far away and you can't focus that much in the subtext. You can't focus that much on the face of the person because most of the times, if you're performing in a big theater, that's not going to be appreciated. So we need to communicate more with words where we cannot communicate with little details. But on camera, we have the opportunity for that, and close-ups are the way for that. We can tell more with the eyes. I think one of the biggest struggles for me to go from theater to film was that there are no rehearsals in film. Those rehearsals are on your own. And it's not that I didn't know that, it's just that I don't think you realize how true that is until you find yourself in that situation. I think as theater actors, we're so used to having that all planned out for us. We get a rehearsal schedule that goes on for months if we're lucky, but if not, weeks, whatever. But we have that time of rehearsal with everybody in which we get to explore the character. And yes, we do work on our own always, but that time with everybody else and that time of exploration is really important for us. When you do film, you don't have that. And you might have a read-through and a few times, well, you're gonna be able to do the scene before they're actually shooting, but it's not the same. And you have to do the work. And I think that takes self-discipline, and that takes a lot of training to be able to get to that point, to be able to force yourself to do the work, to not procrastinate. I think it's very easy once you do film and TV to leave things for the day before, right? In theater, you have something that is pushing you to go to rehearsal every day, but on film, you have to do that. You have to be there for yourself, you have to put the work in, and that's just really important, and there's no way around it. I think another random concept that it's very important to understand as an actor is that on stage, you are editing yourself. There is no editor, and it's live. And yes, I know you know that. You're like, where are you trying to get with this? That means that you are in control of that performance. You are in control of every single thing that's going to happen in that performance. Yes, there are lights and there are other people and things that can go wrong, but mostly you are in control of your performance. And that does not happen in film. Not really. Because then the editors in the post-production process, they can change things. And I think it's really important as an actor to know how things are going to be edited, to know how the shots are going to be, and that's going to be really helpful in your performance. The way that something is shot is very indicative of what the director wants to communicate in the film. So by knowing how the editing will be, you can know a lot about the rhythm and the message of the film, and you cannot overthink it. You can't just be performing and thinking, oh, this shot is this way, or this is going to be edited this way. You know, like let's say you have a sequence, you have a scene, and it can be all in one shot, or it can be all in little close-ups, or it can be all in really quick shots. It can be edited infinite ways, right? And it all says something. And it's not your job to overthink that. It's not your job to be focused on that all the time. But I think it's really good if you can know it and if you can think of your performance related to that. And talking about the editing, you know that things will be edited sometimes, most of the times, things will be edited not in the order that you shot them. And a lot of time you're going to shoot things that are not in the order of the script. So it's really important for you to prepare the whole thing because you will shoot out of order. I've also heard many times actors saying, oh, I'm just going to prepare the scene that we're going to shoot tomorrow. And the problem with that is that then there's a lack of continuity or character, arc, and story. You need to prepare everything and know everything so well because you need to make sure that your timeline is very clear to you to be able to do that. That is, I think, something that is a gift in the theater, that we as actors are able to experience the storyline and be able to experience that timeline live, and we are able to build the emotions. Let's say you're shooting something or you're doing something on stage and the play has a really emotional end. Well, as an actor, it's really helpful that you start and that as the character, you get to experience that and get to that climax. On film, you might just be asked to go directly to that climax. And that requires a lot of preparation on your part, which goes back to the part where you have to rehearse on your own and do a lot of preparation for film too, the same way that you would do for theater. I think we actors put a lot of pressure between the difference between theater and film and the transition to that. But there is this really cool story I heard Helen Mirren tell in an interview. And she was talking about when she was really young and, you know, she grew up doing theater. She grew up on the stages. And that's where she started. And when she came to America and she did her first film, she got advice from Bob Balaban. And she was doing this film that she was playing a Russian and she was a captain in a spacecraft. I would really love to find this movie and see that. But young Helen Mirren was watching the actors and she was in wonder. And she was thinking to herself, how are they so natural? Like, how are American film actors just able to speak with that ease, like it's just real life? And Bob Balaban said to her, when you are doing film, it's like shooting an arrow. you send that arrow, and that's like your performance. You're going to aim at your target, and that target can be whatever emotion or thing you need to portray as your character. But once you have shot that arrow, you have to forget about it. It's gone. It's already on its trajectory to the target, and you can't do anything to change it. It will land where it will land, and you don't know if it will be in the film, and you don't know if you will see it or if the audience will see it, or you don't know if the music will match it. Like, your job as an actor is to shoot and let go. And then don't kill yourself about it when you get home, and just gotta move on. And there's a certain freedom about it. I love this story because it's very true. I think in theater it's a little bit different, but in film there's so much that is not in your control. And it's very frustrating sometimes. You can see it can go many ways. I've seen actors that are film actors, and I've seen them on Broadway, and it was pretty disappointing. And they look amazing on screen, and their acting is amazing on screen because, editing is amazing, direction is great, cinematography, every little thing that can go in it is great. And I've seen theater actors that are incredible on stage and mesmerizing, and you put them on film and it's just okay. And the reason for that is because as an actor, you are not that much in control in film. There's so many things outside of you, and all you can do is just do your best. And honestly, just not disappoint yourself if you, after that, see something and it just doesn't look that good. Of course, you have to take responsibility for the part that corresponds to you. But sometimes it's not you. Sometimes it just, the music doesn't match what Balaban said, right? Or the way they shot the scene just doesn't really work. The lighting is bad. Sometimes the sound is horrible. Oh my God, like that happens all the time, right? In independent films, I don't know why, but the sound is something that almost always goes wrong. And you just have to have that awareness as an actor to be able to, okay, this is my job. My job is to focus on the emotions, on the character life, make it as good as I can, and then that's it. So related on this, when you're on set, there is a monitor where the director looks at and sees if he likes what he's seeing or how things are being shot, and they rewatch what you just shot a lot of times. I wish this is something I had known. I mean, maybe I knew there was a monitor, but I just never had thought about it in this way. You as an actor can see that, or you cannot, and that is your choice. And there are pros and cons to it. And I was just talking about this, right? Like shoot and let go. Sometimes it's helpful to look at the monitor. Sometimes it's helpful to see yourself, because as actors, we are trained to be really self-aware, I think, and that's something that we should strive for, to know what we are doing and be in control of our expression and be in control of what we're doing. But especially on camera, the camera catches really small things. And sometimes there are things that you didn't notice, and if you watch it on the monitor, you can correct. And that's really helpful. Sometimes you see it and you're like, wow. Sometimes you see the finished product and you think, wow, if I had seen that in a monitor, I would have been able to change that and it would have looked so much better. Now, the danger with that is what Bob Balaban kind of was talking against, which is overthinking things. And if you look at that monitor, you will probably get on your head. And the problem with that is that most of us will end up judging ourselves by how we look instead of how we're doing. And that's really dangerous. We all know that in acting, the last thing you can have is vanity. It's never about how you look. It's about the character and it's about the truth of it. But it's very hard to escape, especially when you see yourself on a close-up and there's this hair out of place, or there's this expression that you do that you've never seen yourself do before, and you're like, whoa, why do I just look so weird doing that? Or why am I doing that with my eyes? And you start judging yourself in that way, and you have to step out of that. If you are able to, even if that happens, step out of it and still see past it and look at it objectively from the character's perspective, do look at the monitor. But if you know you won't be able to separate that self-judgment from the character, it's very dangerous. Just don't go close. Let it be the job of the director, and if he wants something to be changed, he will tell you. Another thing that I think I forgot to mention when I was talking about rehearsals that is kind of related to that is that in theater, I think there is a sense of doing something more as a community and all together. And that is with the process too. Usually the director has a technique or a process he wants to implement for the production. And during all those rehearsals, you all follow a similar process. And yes, as actors, we have different things that we need to do before going on stage to get ready. But usually it's pretty similar and we keep it to whatever that production demands of us. On film, I find that people have very different processes. And I'm not just talking about actors, of course, it's directors, DP, the sound person. Everybody's very different. So you really have to be patient and you have to remember what works for you, that we all work different. And some actors like to talk between takes. Like, you don't have that in theater. You can't do that. Usually theater people, when we're in rehearsal, yes, probably when you stop a scene, some people like to talk more than others, but usually we just go for it and we just do the scene and continue going, right? But in film, we have takes. And for example, yes, that's one of the things. I think there's many actors that just don't like to talk and people that do. And if you don't like to talk and the person that you're doing a scene with likes to talk, then there's a problem. And, well, not necessarily a problem, but it's just something that you need to understand, that you need to be really respectful of people's processes. And some people just love to go on a corner and yell and do 1,000 jumping jacks before starting a scene, and someone will just sit on their chair and stay quiet and close their eyes and pretend there's no one else around them. And some people just like to start talking before the director says action and start the scene, so when the director says action, it's already there. And some people are very in themselves before the director says action, and when the director says action, it's a go. And you can't be afraid to do what you have to do. You need to stop thinking what others will think about you, and if they will think it's weird, and if no one else is doing that, you just have to go for it. It's really important for you to be able to follow your process, especially in film, because you have very little time to get yourself in character compared to theater, and you have very little time to do the takes. You have to be good from the start. Like, time is money in film, so you just have to be able to be where you need to be in your mental space and do whatever you have to do for that, and in the same way respect what others have to do. Another difference between a film and theater that I think might take a little to get used to if you come from a theater background is that, in acting, things can be distracting. And in live theater, the audience can be distracting, or something that falls backstage, or, you have someone that's walking out of the theater, or someone falling asleep, someone on their phone. There are 1,000 things that can happen that can distract you. But we are usually trained, and that's still at a distance, and we're usually trained to be able to focus, right? And we are trained to be able to create that wall and levels of focus. So it's pretty important for an actor to learn to manage that focus. But on film, it's another level, because you have the people behind the camera, and you have so many things that might be happening on set while you are acting. I mean, they usually try to keep it very respectful and very quiet while you're acting. But even, for example, a close-up, you have the camera so close to you. And as a theater actor, we don't have that. Even if it's a small theater and the audience is close, there's still a distance. But it's very hard. It takes training, it takes practice to be able to do, for example, a very vulnerable and emotional scene with a camera so close to your face. So you need to forget about the people behind the camera. If you get distracted while acting on film, usually it will be restarted, which is not necessarily a great thing, because if you are not able to manage that focus, you will end up doing a lot of takes, and that's not helpful for anybody, and they usually don't like that in film and TV. While on theater, usually if something like that happens, we use it as improv and we just keep going. So I was talking before about close-ups and how that really makes a difference and changes the way that theater and film are made. And close-ups are such a gift for an actor. It just can be used for subtleties. There's so much you can show in a close-up without even showing it. But there are also dangers to it. In a close-up, you need to be more subtle. And here's when it comes where they tell you be smaller. And it's not smaller. It just, everything needs to be more focused on the eyes. But that's such a big mistake. And to be honest, it's a mistake I made when I did my first film on camera. My character just seemed so bland. And when I looked at it, I was like, why? Like when I was acting it, I was just like, oh, just keep it small. It will seem natural. But that's not true. Like, we are not small as people. Like, look at humans. Like, we are so passionate about things and we are so expressive. I mean, yes, there are people that are not as much as others, but it's not small. Life is not small. Humans are not small. It just more focused, especially on a close-up. Just make sure that everything is happening, but inside you. Just make sure that you are not showing. I know we say that in theater too, don't show, just feel it. But in film, it's so much more important even than what you think it is in theater. And then on the side of technicalities, as I said, you have to know the technicalities. But that's something I'm not going to talk about exactly right now because that's something you can learn everywhere. Something that's important is that you have to work with those technicalities. And some of them might be, move slower for the camera. That happens a lot of time. When you are on stage, you don't have to worry about that. You can do fast movements as much as you want because you don't have to worry about so many other things that are happening around you that depend on you. And you have to hit marks accurately so you're not out of focus. And there are so many little things you have to be thinking about when you're working on camera that are not happening on theater. And they're just different. I'm not saying, in theater you have to be working on so many things. But from a theater background, I think that it's hard to work on camera in that aspect in which you have to be aware of so many little things beside your acting and your partner. And working with the technicalities also sometimes requires you to step up because you have to know them. And yes, the people on set know them, but let's say sometimes the directors and DP plan a scene that's in the move or with certain movements for you because they think that that's what will look good on camera and that's like the shot we're looking for and that will look great. But most of the times they are not actors, they're just experts on their field. Like acting is your specialty. So you as an actor have to know what makes sense character-wise because sometimes they will ask you to do things for the camera and for these technicalities that you have to see that really don't make sense. And you have to be able to put your input and speak up. Like, don't be scared when you are on set to speak up because there are so many people doing different things and we all have our different roles, but it's still a collaborative process, same as in theater. And I feel like so many actors, when they are on film and TV, are not as part of the project as a whole as they are on theater. And, in theater, I feel like we are more a community. We do things more together. And on film and TV, there's more separate roles. There's so many more roles on set and on the production. But still, as an actor and as a professional who's doing their job, if something is off for you from your point of view, you should be able to talk about it and speak up. And probably the director and the DP and whoever else is there will see your point of view and will trust you because that's why they hired you. And I think the last point I wanted to make about camera is the eyes. It's so important when you're working on film on camera, the work of the eyes. There is this workshop. It's called On Camera Acting by Michael Caine. It's very old, but it's on YouTube. I would recommend any actor to watch this video. And it's such a masterclass on how to act for camera. And some things that he talks about maybe nowadays are not that talked about, and maybe nowadays actors are a little bit more free and the techniques have changed a little, but I think almost everything he talks about is very still relevant, and they are basic things and technicalities that are very, very helpful. So the eyes play such an important role. The beauty about that is that eyes can speak more than words, and with the camera you have that, again with what we're saying, the close-ups. And you have to do that through thought. That doesn't mean put pressure and put a lot of tension on your eyes. All the contrary. You have to relax and not push the emotions or plan how it will look on the outside. I think a really good piece of advice that Michael Caine gives on his masterclass is that if the camera, so you're doing a scene with another actor and you're facing each other and we're doing close-ups. So the camera for your close-up will be on one of their shoulders, left or right. So if the camera is on the left shoulder, you will be looking at their left eye. When you're talking to someone, you can look at their right eye or their left eye. You will always be looking at the eye that's closest to the camera. And it makes such a difference. It's such a small movement. And something that you should also not be doing is moving from one eye to the other. I see that in films so many times and it just looks so bad. And many times you see it and you might think there's something off and you don't know what it is. That happens a lot. Or blinking. I laugh because this is one of my biggest pet peeves that I always notice so much on camera. You have to be so careful with blinking on camera. It's not like back in the days, I feel like it was more never blink, but yes, nowadays I think it's more free in that way. Actors blink on camera, but you have to be really careful, especially on close-ups or really emotional scenes or very vulnerable moments. A simple blinking will look so big on camera, and there are actors that just do that all the time. I mean, if you look at Kristen Stewart performing, if you've never noticed, please watch one of her performances. It's crazy. Sometimes I just focus on that and all I can see is blinking. So you just have to be so careful with those little small movements that you might not know that you're doing, and that on a close-up will look very, very big. So these are little tips on being on set and acting on camera. There are so many more things that I would love to talk about, and I will be sending on the email list of the Actor's Vow. But I think that was a really good snippet of little things that you could start thinking about or knowing about if you are planning on doing TV and film and you are a theater actor. And now before we go, I want to bring the play of the week, which this week is Mr. Burns by Anne Washburn. And this is a play that's very contemporary. It's from 2008. And I found randomly on Amazon when I was looking for new plays and new works. And I saw this play that had the drawing of The Simpsons on the cover. And I'm such a big fan of The Simpsons. I grew up with them. I just still watch them. Older seasons are way better. I'm not crazy about the new Simpsons nowadays, but still. So I saw the play and I saw the name and I was like, okay, I need to read this. I really didn't know what it was about, but the reviews were really good and it just caught my attention. And I was really pleasantly surprised. This is a play about some kind of apocalypse. It's like the end of America. And it's very smart. It's very different. It's, I think, a challenge for an actor if you ever wanted to perform this. I don't think it's a play for monologues or scene study if that's what you're looking for. But I really think it's a play that as an actor you should read. It's very experimental. And the way that it happened is that in 2008, the writer, Anne Washburn, and the group of actors from a company called Civilians, it's an investigative theater group in New York City, decided to do an exploration of what would happen to pop culture and to that narrative past the phase of civilization. And what they did is put these actors and they told them, remember everything that you can from memory from The Simpsons and just act as if you were remembering that in this situation. And the situation is the end of America as we know it, the end of electricity and the end of technology and all that. And it's very interesting, and it has 3 acts, and the third act goes into this Greek-like play style with a chorus and everything. it's a really good contemporary play, very experimental, and I think it's a challenge for any actor who would want to be in this. So this will be it for this week. Thank you so much for joining me another week. I hope you liked this episode and you found it helpful. If you did, please go on iTunes and subscribe and leave a review. That will be really helpful for the podcast, and I read all the reviews and I will send you all my love and eternal appreciation. And if you don't do already, follow The Actor's Vow on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And yeah, I will see you next week. Thank you so much, guys, and I really can't wait for you to read the interview with Sheldon Mba this Sunday Spotlight.